Hey, what's up, and welcome back to another edition of Phil's Monday Movie Review. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad that you're here. And just like previous Phil's Monday Movie Reviews, all this October, we're going to be discussing nothing but horror films. And it looks like we have two more of Phil's Monday Horror Movie Reviews left to go. And it just so happens that Halloween lands on a Monday next week, which is very convenient for this channel. So be sure to stick around to see what horror movie we're going to talk about next week. But for now, let's talk about this week's recommendation, which is none other than one of my personal favorite horror films of the last few years. And I'm talking about Hereditary. Keep in mind, I won't go too far into spoilers. Even though this movie is 4 years old, it's still one of those films where I would rather you go in not knowing too much about it. I'll mention a couple things about the plot here and there, but nothing that'll give away the entire movie. With all that being said, let's get started. Released in 2018, Hereditary is written and directed by Ari Aster, and it stars Toni Collette. This is a supernatural and psychological horror tale where we follow the Graham family. The film opens up with Toni Collette's character, Annie, who is burying her mother, who just passed away. Annie and her husband and her two kids go through one family tragedy right after another. And during this time, Annie and the rest of her family begin to unravel a series of cryptic and legit terrifying secrets that leads to a fate that the family has now pretty much inherited, hence the name Hereditary. As the film progresses, Annie, who is still coping with the death of her mother, begins to learn more and more about what kind of a person her mother really was. She even begins to see very strange shit out in public and has these really terrifying dreams. Steve, who is Annie's husband, does his best to preserve the peace between Annie and their son Peter. And I think this would be a good place to stop talking about the film's plot and engage on everything else. Because Hereditary is just one of those films where I believe you should experience on your own. If you've seen this film, I think you would agree with me. When I first saw Hereditary, I was actually pretty grateful that I didn't know too much about this movie, because this movie did an amazing job in just pulling me deeper and deeper into these characters. Okay, so let's talk about why Hereditary rules. There are scenes in this film that absolutely gave me chills up my spine. A lot of creepy visuals and great sound mixing helped me get uncomfortable and did a great job in elevating my anxiety levels, I'll tell you that much. There's this one scene that I want to mention, and I won't give anything away over here, but I gotta talk about this one shot. Something happens when something is hiding in the shadows. It's a wide shot. The first time I watched this movie, I didn't notice this until moments later. And when I spotted this one thing in the shadowy corner of a room, I lost my shit. It's a simple shot, yet it's one of the creepiest shots I've seen in a horror film in a very long time. Look, this came out 4 years ago, and I still check the corners of my room whenever I wake up in the middle of the night. Guys, I love Hereditary. I love how Ari Aster crafted this film. It's a great combination of art house horror and mainstream horror, with great themes included like mental illness and coping with family tragedies. The cinematography, the music, the script, the editing, they all form a great and unforgettable film in Hereditary. Toni Collette. Oh boy, Toni Collette. She is absolutely flawless in this film. She is compelling to the point where you truly feel for her. To this day, I look back at the crime committed against cinema by the Academy for not recognizing Toni Collette's unforgettable performance in Hereditary. You want to talk about Oscar snubs? This one's probably one of the biggest ones of them all. I mentioned art house horror. Now, I have to talk about this, and I don't want to spend too much time on the subject, but I'm aware of the term elevated horror and the association it has with films like Hereditary, like films like Get Out and The Witch. Personally, I think the term is pretentious and just overall silly. Movies that prioritize psychological elements and metaphors over gore and jump scares. It's just, I guess it's one way of describing elevated horror, I guess. Look, I love my A24 films, but I recognize that some fans of A24 can be goofy to an elitist level. I mean, try putting the word elevated in another genre. Let's go with comedy. What would you consider an elevated comedy? I mean, you see how silly that sounds. I saw someone, and I can't remember who said it, but I guess you can go with Snakes on a Plane as elevated horror because it's a horror and it's at a high altitude. I thought the joke was worth a good chuckle. So, but anyways, I guess that's the closest I'll get to ranting on video here, and I do not want to get to that level. So let's move on. If you've never seen Hereditary, I highly recommend this one. This film fucked me up for a while, so I do want you to consider that there are elements in this film that deal with trauma and family loss. There are scenes in this film that can make someone feel uneasy and overall disturbed. However, I think it's easy to say that this film is one of my favorites in this genre, and I enjoy that it has a good level of rewatchability. To me, Hereditary stands in the same field as The Shining and The Exorcist. But with all that being said, Hereditary is definitely 100% horror cinema. But that is it for Phil's Monday movie review. I want to thank you for tuning in. And have you seen Hereditary? Let's hear your thoughts down below. And be sure to tune in next week where we talk about another movie, another horror movie. But until then, take care. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you next time. Peace.